sure it's not an age thing? All right. Who's in charge of speakers? Is anybody here who does speakers?
Hold that, now go look. Now go look.
I see no hands going up. Jake do it?
Jake will always try anything.
All right, let's see what we can do. Hello, 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 hello. Hello. It's not a very pretty view I'm getting here. I'm hoping this doesn't take long. Okay. Well, how about this one down here? Or are they separate or all together? Is that any better? All right, great. I say we're going to start on a somber but necessary note. This past week we had one of our greatest fans, I think a lot of you know him, Steve Williams.
Yep.
Who succumbed to a long battle of pancreatic cancer. He's been an integral part of the Corvette racing community for a long, long time. A huge supporter of Danny Bink's camp up there in Elkhart Lake. And we were all saddened by that. In honor of Steve, if you look at the cars, we have a small decal with his image on it.
Nice.
And we were very proud to have him be part of our program. He's going to be greatly missed. But Steve, I just want you to know we're here, bud. We're going to take the battle to these guys and carry on this one for you. So those of you who knew Steve, say a prayer for him. Those of you who didn't, you missed out on a great guy, and he will long be remembered in the Corvette community. So with that, we'll move on. We looked at last year's events, and I think it was pretty remarkable. I think I watched that video of the finish at Daytona. I've probably seen it 286 times. Every time I look at it, I smile. I love every minute of it, fully realizing that I was about 4 inches away from looking for work. But Antonio and Oliver kept me employed by doing a great job and creating the closest class finish in the history of the event. That was pretty cool to be part of that. And then obviously fast forwarding all the way to Petit Le Mans, you know, in that nip and tuck battle that we had with Ford for the championship. And we ended up coming away. There were 3 championships in the regular series. Thank you. And there were 3 championships. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but the Patron Endurance Series has 4 races: Daytona, Sebring, Watkins, Glen, and Petit Le Mans. Those same championships are available for those 4 long endurance races. And we got those 3 too. So 6 championships were available. We won all 6. So that sent a little message to everybody. In the end, is all that does is paint your target on your back just a little bit brighter and a little bit bigger. So nobody went home this winter and just sat on their can. I can assure you that everybody from Ford and Porsche and BMW and Ferrari, we're working hard, that they want what we have, and we don't want to relinquish that. So we're going to do our best. We had 2 great opportunities down here. One in December and then one here early in January, testing down here. The testing went really well. We learned a lot. We got back here for this event, and of course track conditions changed, temperatures changed. Guys worked very, very hard over the last couple of days trying to get the cars sorted out. 3-car guys got a car I think everybody's happy with. 4-car guys not quite as happy. The reality of it is this is a race over 24 hours where weather's going to play a huge role here. Air temperature is going to play a huge role. Track conditions are going to play a huge role. Any 24-hour race, you've got a multitude of things that are going to affect the outcome. At the end of the day, the guy who spends the least amount of time in pit lane is the guy who's going to win the race. So I don't really pay a lot of attention to where we qualify. I mean, unless we were 4 seconds a lap off or something. You know, there's guys who are wired up, geared up, and turbo cars can turn it up, and they can go out and qualify 1, 2, 4, whatever they want to do. You know, that's cool. You just got to be around at the end of 24 hours. You got to finish first, and you do that by not screwing up during the event. So we've got a pretty good history of being successful at doing that. And I think even though other cars may have demonstrated more speed here, I think if you asked those in the know, if you had to pick a favorite, gun to your head, pick a guy who's going to win, 9 out of 10 of them are going to say us because we've got the experience and the record behind us. And that's what we're going to be banking on tomorrow. The guys are ready, the cars are fully prepared. We're as good as we can be. And we're gonna work as hard as we can work, and we're gonna try and make as few mistakes as we possibly can. And we're gonna take what this race gives you. And 25% great car, 25% great team, 50% good luck. We hope we got the good luck. If we do, we're gonna kick some butt. If we don't, we're gonna soldier on to the end. We're gonna take what he gives us and move on to Sebring. So we take a long view. This won't be our last Daytona race. This certainly isn't the last race of the year. So regardless of outcome, as you know, we never ever give up. Yes, you look at that. So I don't want anybody to have their dauber down because we looked at qualifying times. It didn't seem to be like they'd be that competitive. Not gonna matter. 55 cars on the racetrack. They'll be running into everything, or they'll be running into you. So I'm always excited to watch what happens, good and bad. Not that I wish ill will on the other guys, but you know, good fortune doesn't necessarily happen to you. Your good fortune is the other guy's bad fortune. So if somebody has bad fortune, I'm okay with that. We've been on both ends of that deal, you know. So, you know, a little voodoo curse. I'm down with that. But I think we're going to depend on what we've done best for all these years. And I think that's going to bring us home. The drivers are excited. They always get excited for this race because they always want to go home with a watch. That's all they care about is the watch. And it's not just American drivers. It's everybody. There are drivers out there, I mean Formula One guys, that want to run Daytona because they want the watch. Like, you're making $13 million a year, you could go buy a watch. They want the watch that they get for free. That's the nature of drivers. If it's free, it's just their size. They want that watch. It has huge value, it has huge prestige, and I think that's one of the driving forces, and they do wear them with pride. That's all the things that add up to make this thing so special. And obviously it's the most important race in North America, and globally it's only superseded by obviously the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So although you don't get a watch there for winning GT, so that's why they're geared up for this. So at this point in time, the most fun is when I open this up to question and answer. You guys know that I'll answer any question about what went on in the past, what's going on now, what might happen in the future. And as I've said so many times, if I don't have a good answer, I am adept enough to make an answer up that you won't know the differences in the truth. I'm that good. I'm that good. And that humble. Don't forget that. Who's got the first question? Yes, sir.
Two-part question.
Two-part question.
Since Porsche is now allowed to race a mid-engine 911, has Chevrolet or GM, have you already petitioned the FIA for a mid-engine C7, and can we expect one on the track anytime soon?
All right, this is a very good question. Since the Porsche has decided, everybody know what Porsche did? I'll give you a detailed thing. They you know, for years, I mean, it was pretty cool in 1959 to have that, and we're talking about a rear-engine car. We're talking about a rear-engine car. We're talking about a car that has an engine hanging off in back of the rear axle. Other than servicing it, I don't know whoever thought, I guess Ferdinand thought that was a good idea. And it was probably a good idea in 1959. Fast forward to 2016, not so good. Hard to make a car like that drive around with cars of the sophistication we have today. So what Porsche decided to do, and to their credit, I have to tell you, it was a brilliant piece of engineering. The way the rules read, your engine has to remain in its same location. Location is not clearly defined. So location, for all intents and purposes, is front of the car, back of the car, front of the driver, back of the driver. Has nothing to do with the axles. So what Porsche did was, they took the engine that hung off the back of the car, in back of the rear axle, they took the back seat out and they turned the motor around, so now it's in front of the rear axle, but still behind the driver. So it's in the same location. Obviously, moving that engine to the center of the car helps handling, all the other things that go along with that. It was an ingenious interpretation and exploitation of the rule, and they did a marvelous job with it. Now, they didn't do that because they wanted the car to be just as fast as it was, and they didn't do that because they wanted the car to be slower than it was. They did it because they had a pretty good idea the car would be faster than it was. Unfortunately, the sanctioning body has no competition data on the car, so Porsche is starting this race at the same BOP as they finished last year. So it's pretty clear their performance level is going to be improved. So that's going to be a challenge for us and all the other guys. Now, the question becomes, have we petitioned the FIA, ACO, or IMSA to move the engine in the Corvette? Well, according to the rule, the engine has to stay in the same location. That means in front of the driver. By the way, if you looked at the car, you know we have that thing jam-packed right up under his jockey shorts. There's no way to move it any further back and have him, we'd have to get him a saddle and ride it like a horse to get that thing. So no, the answer is no. But at the end of the day, we depend on our sanctioning bodies to do a wonderful job of balancing the performance between the cars, so that becomes unnecessary. I could go and spend $5 million in the off season and bring in NASA scientists and try and make our cars be the fastest cars out there. And we would be successful at doing that. And then there's all that would happen would be by race 2, the sanctioning body would BOP us, and that $5 million is just out the window and a total waste. So that's all things you have to consider. We can't move our motor. We'll just have to wait and see what product the production car evolves into as we move forward down the road. And as you've heard me say before, I think there's probably going to be an 8th generation Corvette. And I think it's safe to say that the performance level of that vehicle will be greater than the performance level of the current car, just as C7 was better than C6, was better than C5, 4, 3, 2, you name it. So it's just a question, the way we're homologated right now, we're going to run this car this year and next year, okay? And then we have an opportunity to re-homologate, which means we can make some design changes to the existing car. So we'll get that figured out. We'll get that figured out. But it won't be that big a deal. You know, it's good for them. They're going to be more competitive. They have huge problems. As you saw, they struggled well, they won a championship 2 years ago, but that was strictly a BOP thing. They have trouble with tires and other things. So it's good for them. It keeps them interested. We don't want to race without them, just like we don't want to race without Ford. We don't want to race without BMW. We don't want to race without Ferrari. We already ran one racing series out of business by being the best. We don't want that to happen again. So we be patient, and it paid off. It paid off last year. I mean, who wins 6 championships in a single year? Well, Corvette. It's not the first time we've done that. So we have to be very careful on how we modulate our success so that we can continue to have a race series in which we can compete. And that's very long view, but we'll be okay. Don't worry, we'll be okay. Next question. That was a good question. We gotta have one more. Are we in Denver? Have you guys been smoking? Dude, that was a great answer, man. Can you run through that one more time for me? I like hearing that. We gotta have another question. What was the question? Yeah, what was that question? Good point, Walt. Anything else?
Doug,
no? Yeah?
we get asked all the time about the pitot tubes. Would you tell them one more time about that from last year, the tubes?
Oh, at the front of the car, those 2 little aluminum tubes that come out at 90 degrees, those are pitot tubes. Any pilots in here? Anybody ever fly? You know what pitots are, true airspeed kind of thing. What happens, there's a little microscopic hole in each one of those. The car moves forward, the air rushes in, the velocity of that air is measured, and that's what we use as a standard for calibrating everything around the car. So it's what we call true airspeed, in this case, ground speed. And the reason there's 2 is because our engineers feel it's very good to have a redundant capability. Because the apertures are very, very tiny. If one gets filled up, clogged up, doesn't work, then they can go to the other one. So that's why there's 2 of them. Good point there.
Good ask.
Thank you. Good question, filling in when nobody else is going to ask one. All right, anybody else have a question? Richard, hey, get a room. All right? Honest to God. Richard, do you have a question? Does everybody know Richard Prince? Raise your hand. Yes, photographer for Corvette Racing since the very beginning and even before. We've only had one. These people are all brain dead today. I have no idea what's going on here.
Why are the Ford GTs going 2.5 faster qualifying when they did a practice finish with the Ford and 7.5?
I'm sorry, we have a bad connection, Richard. I didn't hear that. The question is, how come the Fords are, put a number on it, 2.5 faster than they were whenever they were? Because obviously they've done a lot of homework. They've worked hard. You know, those are Roush Yates power plants in there. They haven't been sitting on their hands. And last year was their first year. You've heard me say this, that every time you go out, you add a chapter to the book, learning about the car. Right? When they showed up here last year, they had never raced before. And it looked like it. Okay? But they have a whole year under their belt now. They weren't sitting at home in the off season, and they had a lot of ground to make up. And when I say that, I don't mean that they were that far behind. I mean that their intuitive level of understanding of how the car works was brand new. They had to become familiar with their product. And you always make your biggest gains after that first year of competition. You figure all the big stuff out and the car gets better. And then you get into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller degrees of improvement as you have more time on the car. And that's why we're seeing such a big jump this year in their performance than we saw last year. They'll keep the same car for next year, and their level of improvement next year will be incrementally smaller than what it is this year because they will have learned, they've got the big chunks done, and they'll be focusing on the small ones. So that is the main reason that we're seeing that increase for speed. And again, you have to revert back. One of the benefits of BOP, when it's properly done, is that they expect that to happen, just as they will expect with Porsche to happen, and just as they might with a Ferrari, who was a brand new car last year. They'll then bring those things back and have the levels match up, so as we go on through this season, that this isn't a repeated thing where one car has a distinct advantage over the others. And that'll change a little bit from racetrack to racetrack. Daytona's kind of an outlier because you're at full throttle here so often. It's different here than it would be obviously at Lime Rock Park, or different than it would be at Elkhart, or different than it will be at Sebring. So you have to depend on BOP to bring that in. Yes, ma'am?
Can you tell us about the fire?
Yes, I can tell you about the fire. Fire we had here, we've decided at the conclusion of last year's race, if you recall, we had a fire at the Roar last year as well. And we saw that brought that 1-2 finish, so we thought we'd make that our annual MO. And in order to make it be a little closer finish, we thought we'd have a bigger fire. And hopefully it'll work out in our favor. No, the car uses direct injection, which requires a pump that delivers fuel directly into the cylinder. And because it's going directly into the cylinder, it's coming in at 3,000 PSI, pounds per square inch. That's high pressure, anybody who doesn't know. The pumps that we had been using forever were production pumps. Those pumps are no longer used at GM. They have graduated their direct injection pumps to a new generation, which we wanted to incorporate because they're not going to make those old pumps anymore. Now, we've never failed a pump, but we don't have any lifing data on them either. So we have a whole stockpile of our old pumps that we're just antiquating, saving them, fortunately, and bringing the new pumps in. Well, the new pumps are plumbed differently, all right? They've changed the plumbing on them. There's two steel lines, all right, that come off the back that go into the fuel rails, all right? At the end of those, in order to seal 3,000 PSI, there's a spherical joint that uses a collar to clamp it and hold it. You can't manufacture that spherical joint in one piece. It has to be brazed, high temperature brazing, that brazes that spherical ball on the end of that tube. And all our fuel lines were always in horizontal configuration. The new pump caused us to vertically integrate that fuel line the way it was set up. There's some harmonic in the engine that put a huge vibration level on that vertical line, and it cracked that bronze joint, that brazed bronze joint, which then, in a just tiny little pinhole is too big a hole, all right? Smaller than a pinhole, microscopic, was blowtorching fuel out at 3,000 PSI onto the hot exhaust. It doesn't take, when you have the ability to atomize fuel, very little fuel, huge amounts of oxygen, you get a big fire in a big hurry. And that's what that was. As long as that pump was pumping 3,000 PSI, there was a blowtorch under that hood. And that's what caused that fire. And we got it back to pitch. It didn't take us 10 minutes to locate the problem. Obviously it takes much longer to fix it, When I say fix it, find a solution. I don't mean repair the car. And our short term is obviously go back to the old pumps, which by the way, we had never failed one, so we're fine, that won't be an issue. But we want to use the new pump, so we're going back and we've got some resources in NASA and the aircraft industry that are working with us to provide us with the technology to develop a product, because they have the same issues there that they already have figured out. So before the season gets too much further along, we'll be back to using the new pumps and we'll have that situation resolved. But that's what caused that one. And then we stopped the other car, obviously, because they're plumbed exactly the same, and we didn't know what the failure mode was. We knew what the failure was, we didn't know why. When we got back, we were able to do all the analysis and solve that. So we should be okay here. Yes, Charlie?
But you're using the other chassis though, right?
Pardon?
You're using the other chassis?
Yes, this is the spare chassis we built up and took to Le Mans. Two reasons for that. Number one, the only damage to the race car, the firewall is a composite firewall. It's carbon fiber and it has a flame-proof fire retardant material that's adhered to it, and that helped save it. But the temperature was so intense that entire firewall has to be replaced, and it's bonded to the tube chassis. It's actually glued onto it. And it's a very labor intensive, and it has multiple shapes to it, as you can imagine. Firewall, it's not just a uniform plain sheet that runs across. It has nooks and crannies and folds and wraps and holes. And it takes a long time to do that. And because it destroyed the wiring harness in the car, and these wiring harnesses are very complex and wildly expensive. When we looked at the spares setup for Le Mans, we would have had to have taken the wiring harness out of the spare car to put it in the new repaired car to maintain the backside of our spare level. Why go through all that trouble? Just incorporate the new chassis with the wiring harness already in it, doesn't affect anything, and leave the guys at home to get that thing fixed in a reasonable time frame. And there's no sense in putting those guys through that. Could we have done it? Yeah. But when you have a spare car ready to go, didn't make any sense. So that's why we brought the spare car, which, by the way, is totally identical to the old car. There's not a modicum of difference between the two of them. They're exactly the same. So that's the deal on spare car. Yes, sir. Somebody here.
Yeah, I had the same exact question.
Yeah.
But I'll go to another one. The BOP between Le Mans and between something like Anderson. Are we going to get a better BOP at Le Mans next year?
The question is kind of that there seems to be a difference between BOP here and BOP at Le Mans. Yes. And are we going to get a better BOP at Le Mans? Kind of like what we had here at the end of last year. Let me start out by answering that by saying first of all, we have to understand Le Mans is French. So these guys are never going to admit they made a mistake in their life. One of the few people I know that put backup lights on tanks. But they have recognized that there may be a better way to do it. And they have recognized that maybe the way we're doing it over here could provide them an opportunity to improve their process. They're here at this race, by the way. Their entire BOP contingent is here. And since Le Mans last year, have been in constant contact to look at the data, to look at the strategies that are involved, to look at the algorithms that they use, to look at all the science that they employ to make that BOP be more effective. So the answer is, to the first part is yes, their capabilities to improve BOP should exist. They should be getting better, and they will get better. The hard part of the question is, are we going to be the beneficiary of that? And I can tell you from a political perspective, and to some degree this is understandable, I can make an argument on both sides of this case. Le Mans is part of the World Endurance Championship, the WEC Series, okay? It's their premier event. We only compete at Le Mans. We don't compete in any other WEC series. And because of our record of success there, other competitors, and rightfully so, would say, why do you invite Corvette to come to our event, our premier event? They cherry pick it, leave with a trophy, and never come back. Meanwhile, we're supporting all the other races in the series around the world, China, Japan, Australia, wherever the hell they race. We're doing all this legwork, they come in and leave with the big trophy. I mean, that's a legitimate gripe. It's a legitimate gripe. So a question becomes to BOP, if you're the organizers, do you want us to be competitive? Probably, because we bring a lot to the event, obviously, and because we supported them when they didn't have a huge event. You know, 17 consecutive years we've supported them, through bad, mostly, and good, recently. So they have a debt of gratitude, but politics play a heavy role. If I'm in their chair, I got to think to myself, what's the value in setting this up to ensure the fact that Corvette could really have a good chance to win again? And all the guys who support me every day are left out in the cold. That's what we're up against. So the solution to that, obviously, would be to develop some type of program that would compete, not necessarily us, but some type of program that would compete in the WEC that would eliminate that issue for them and obviously eliminate the issue for us. So they were rightfully embarrassed after last year's race. I mean, severely embarrassed. And they took it on the chin from all their Le Mans fans who didn't come from just Corvette fans, it came from everybody who said you guys whiffed. I mean, it was a terrible display. It wasn't a race. They know that, and they are very sensitive to that. So that works in our favor. I have every confidence that it will be better than it was last year. I can't stand up here and unequivocally say that the cars are going to be perfectly balanced, and it'll be understandable why they aren't. That's not going to stop us from going. It's not going to stop us from competing. They do like us there. They appreciate what we do. They appreciate what we did last year by not whining and complaining when they screwed it up. We were the only team that had a bitch. Every other team was bitching in the post. Have you guys heard me tell this story? Tuesday after, it doesn't matter, I'm telling it again, all right. Tuesday after the event, all the manufacturers meet with the sanction body to discuss what went on at this event and how we make next year's better. And it's a pretty serious meeting. But the beginning meeting always starts with all the teams there, team representatives, of which obviously I'm there, and they're patting each other on the back, congratulating the guy that won, throwing a few barbs at him, I won because of this, the usual BS, all right? And then you sit down and you have a good constructive meeting. 17th year, this is the 17th meeting I've been at. This is the first year there were no handshakes, there was not a word of congratulations, there was no camaraderie, it was silence, people went to their chairs, sat down, and just kept to themselves. It was an amazing atmosphere that I had never seen before. I said, young Ben Johnson was with me. He says, what do we need to do at this meeting? I said, we don't need to do anything. Just everybody knows what happened. Sanctioning body knows, all our competitors know. We sit down here and we just listen to what goes on. Are you sure we should? No, just sit down, relax. This meeting starts and it's like somebody pressed a starter gun and it was WWE 102 WrestleMania Wrestle-Off. And language and yelling and screaming and going back and forth. This went on for about 45 minutes. Finally, the guys at the front of the table running the meeting from the FIA and ACO, time out. We are done. I don't want to hear another word from you people about this past race. I don't want to hear another word. There's only one team in this room that has any reason to bitch, and that's Corvette Racing. And they haven't said a word. You guys could take a little lesson from them. Yes, clap. Thank you. That's a long-winded background to say they like us and they respect us. Okay? Honor, integrity, respect, and sportsmanship. Those are the four pillars on which we operate, and we will always operate on that. They see that, they have a high level of appreciation. That can work in our favor, but don't expect that we're going to go out and qualify on the pole at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And that will not happen, but I do believe we will be competitive. Yes, Walt?
Labra competition. You think maybe they'll get some support for
Labra competition, those of you that follow there, last year in WEC, okay, they run an AM car, they run at Le Mans. As a matter of fact, they won a couple years. We won a couple years ago, we won